Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the reaction around the House of Commons from both Conservative and opposition MPs to Boris Johnson's embarrassingly weak sanctions in the face of Putin's escalation regarding Ukraine. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So this is becoming a bit of a theme. As this video comes out, Prime Minister's questions will be starting, and it is very likely that the questions directed at the Prime Minister will echo those asked of him earlier in the week, which I'll be discussing here. I've been doing this for a little while now, and talking about something that happened in Parliament that week that's probably going to come up again in PMQs. And this is a direct consequence of Boris Johnson consistently failing on all serious matters of government to provide satisfactory responses at the first time of asking. And I don't mean satisfactory in the political sense. Obviously, opposition MPs are rarely going to be happy with how the Prime Minister of whichever party responds because they believe in rather different solutions to the problems. But Boris Johnson confounds even his own MPs. On this occasion, Boris Johnson came to Parliament yesterday to take part in an emergency debate arising from Putin's escalation of attacks on Ukraine. Not the Ukraine, as the Putin apologists in both the UK and the US describe it, Ukraine. The Ukraine was a Soviet vassal behind the Iron Curtain. Ukraine is a sovereign nation which elects its own government and elected a government some years ago which wished to engage more with Europe than an oppressive Putin regime. And President Putin did not appreciate this. He wasn't happy about it. Did he think to himself, oh, is it because I'm too much of a bellend? No, he thought, I've not been enough of a bellend. I'll show you, hence his invasion. An invasion that started years ago and drew no serious action from the Western powers that promised Ukraine protection in return for them giving up their Soviet-era nuclear weapons. That it ever got this far is hemispherical disgrace. But those governments who have failed to act seriously before have started to do so a little bit more now. Now, it could be argued it's still not enough. Just for context before I get onto Johnson's non-sanctions, President Biden has been told by both Democrats and Republicans that he needs to do much more. Then you see reports that he is waiting on more severe sanctions as a response to a further escalation. It's like, well, don't go in with everything now, because then what have we got if he ramps it up? But like I said in my video yesterday, I don't want to get into a technical discussion on a complex matter where I am conscious that I do not have all the facts at my disposal. I read a report which suggests that the currently camped Russian invasion force, if indeed that is what it becomes, cannot remain in its threatening positions for long, can't just stay there for weeks. The conditions are such that Putin's forces have only a matter of days, according to this report, before they have to move. Now, whether that move will be towards Ukraine's territories or back inland is what we do not yet know. Which is why I can't understand hesitancy with sanctions. Because, as I see it, the longer we wait, the harder it is for Putin to back down and save face. Because we're all after a peaceful resolution here. A peaceful resolution requires diplomacy, and diplomacy, page 1 of diplomacy, is all about letting everyone claim victory to their own people, letting everyone save face. Surely it would be better to hit Putin with severe sanctions just for the threat of invading, so that if we were going to make that work at all, he simply responds by going, I don't know what all the fuss was about. Yeah, I had these forces, but they're in Russian territory. I've got every right to be. They're only on exercises. They've finished them now. They're going to go back to the barracks. What's the problem? Not possible if he actually invades Ukraine and then pulls out with any difference made. I cannot imagine how those troops can now withdraw without Putin looking beaten. It just occurs to me that ramping up sanctions as different bridges are crossed just keeps backing Putin into a corner from which there is no face-saving escape. So he may as well fight. But I accept that there will be things I'm not properly considering. I'm not an expert on the application of sanctions. But as inadequate as Biden's sanctions may have been, and certainly appeared to me, they were nothing compared to Boris Johnson's level of pathetic nothingness. In fact, let me demonstrate just how pathetic Johnson's announcement was, right? His supporters in the media, the likes of the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, you would think he's announced sanctions yesterday. He's been talking tough. They've been they've been putting front pages on recently about Johnson talking tough to Russia. Was that on their headlines this morning? The Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail both quote President Biden on their front page. They've been attacking Biden in the past, but they quote him on the front page, not Johnson. Nothing to stick on the front page about what Johnson said. Even the Daily Express said we need to do more. They ran with a photo of Johnson talking to military leaders, as did the Telegraph, to try and pretend they've got a prime minister, but nothing lauding Johnson's brilliance or might in their headlines, because even they cannot twist his feeble attempts yesterday into anything to shout about on a front page. He announced sanctions against 3 oligarchs, none of whom are even resident in the UK, I gather. What was the point of that? Actually, that was rhetorical. We know what the point was. The point was to alert those of Putin's agents that are active in the UK that I might be forced to hit you soon, so you should get your whatever assets you can out of the country right now. Because MPs were not impressed with this pathetic gesture from Johnson. A man whom they know is deeply embroiled in Russian interference. That's known. Unlike with some other issues that has upset Conservative MPs, Johnson didn't even have a band of toadies backing him up yesterday, as far as I could tell. Didn't watch the whole thing, but as far as I could tell. Everyone who stood up seemed to be expressing their view that the measures announced by the Prime Minister were pathetic. He actually seemed taken aback as well, having to emphasise that there would be more coming. Oh, this is just the start. This is just the start. Absolute nonsense. We have been anticipating this moment for some time. It hasn't taken us by surprise. It's been talked about openly in public for some time. The government had plenty of notice to prepare a package of sanctions and be ready to put them in place immediately. Targeting 3 people with no major presence in this country and 5 banks, which, okay, I'd never heard of. That doesn't mean anything. But the point is that Putin's never heard of them. Have a tiny role in his money laundering racket. That's no response at all. In fact, Johnson tried to claim that Roman Abramovich was on the list targeted. Now, his name will have come up because he must be the most famous of Putin's oligarchs in the UK due to his ownership of the Chelsea Football Club. But he wasn't on the list. He wasn't targeted. And Johnson refused to correct the record when challenged. Oh, what's that? Boris Johnson lied in Parliament and refused to correct the record. I am astounded. That being said, I did gather later on that he has since agreed to correct the record. So maybe he wasn't lying after all. Maybe it was a genuine mistake. But if that's the case, then there are questions to be asked. In fact, actually, he's even lazier than imagined. Because it's not like we've targeted like hundreds of Putin's pals. Like there's European countries that have targeted nearly 400. So, yeah, I can understand a list like that. You might get muddled up. You might have been discussing Roman Abramovich being on that list, and then he wasn't on the list, and you sort of forgot, okay, he's sanctioned three people. Don't tell me you can't learn 3 names. He knows the names. Either he was deliberately lying, or he did not make the decision as to which 3 oligarchs would receive token sanctions. And if Johnson wasn't making that decision, who was? Because when your Prime Minister is heavily implicated in being a paid-for Russian asset, MPs have every right to ask careful questions about his motives and actions. I would like to see someone asking this today. Did Boris Johnson deliberately mislead the House yesterday regarding Abramovich? Or was it a genuine mistake because he had not personally made the decision as to which 3 people would be targeted? Because if he didn't make that decision, who did? I think it's important to know. The actions of some world leaders may not be going far enough, but Johnson is giving the distinct impression of trying to do the bare minimum to pretend that he's standing up for Ukraine. But like a lazy student, his idea of the bare minimum is not really what others regard as the bare minimum, even his own side. Some were saying that the threat to Ukraine came at a good time for Johnson. Not sure it has, given the universal condemnation of his weak action. And it's come from everywhere within the Conservative Party, from the hard right to the more, well, what few moderates are left, all the way along. They're all talking against Johnson's actions here. It's all from his own side. You know, this may not even be a political weakness that Johnson's exposing again, because you can imagine some Conservative MPs will sometimes make a public stand on something they don't really care about, but they know that it's looking bad in public. So they'll publicly criticise Johnson for a particular stance, but they don't do anything. But I'm prepared to believe that many Conservative MPs may be genuinely aghast that we are not more robustly defending Ukraine here. absolutely prepared to believe that a significant number of Conservative MPs are speaking and acting here, not out of fear for how another show of weakness has been viewed in public, but from a position of genuine horror at allowing an ally to be treated like this. Just because all Conservative, and I mean all Conservative MPs did exactly what Putin wanted, doesn't mean they're all on his side. Some of them are genuinely opposed to his attempts to weaken the West. They were just too stupid to see it or too weak to oppose it. But stupidity and weakness is not the same thing as being complicit. There may yet be hope that Tory MPs do force Johnson to get serious. My hopes are not high, but they do exist, because it is now obvious that Johnson has no intention of hurting Putin. Yesterday's announcement was not a phase one with the threat of another phase of sanction if Putin escalates. It was a clear intention to do almost nothing to help and actually give himself room to apply more sanctions that will equally be worthless. You know, at the end of the day, this is binary. This isn't shades of grey, this is binary. We either apply enough sanctions to force Putin to change his tack, or we do not. There's no scaling it up. We either meet that bar, there's a certain level that will force Putin to act. We either meet that level or we do not. If the UK is going to take robust action here, it will require Conservative MPs to force the government to act. Not just stand up and make pretty speeches, then sit back down grumbling that the words have fallen on deaf ears. And what the public and opposition do or say, absolutely irrelevant here. Only Conservative MPs have the power to make Johnson move on this. He's not going to do it of his own volition. He's not going to see the wisdom in it. He's paid for, but it's even likely that he may be a target for blackmail here. They're going to have to force his hand. You know, and if Johnson doesn't move further, it will be because the wider Parliamentary Conservative Party, regardless of their private thoughts or public speeches, was happy to allow the UK to further diminish its international standing by failing yet again another test of global leadership. But we will see. Like I say, I'm sure this is going to be picked up on PMQs, and from your point of view already has been. I'll add my thoughts on that tomorrow. But until then, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.